Hello, welcome to Scrap Time. My name's Christine and this video is part of the Inky background series and we are going to be using the gel press. I'm going to start by showing you some papers I've made so far. I started with some blues and greens and you can just see the different variations of color, and so when you use the gel press you're making prints, and these would be hard to get any other way if you were to just apply your paint down. So it's sort of fun. So you have this one. Then I had put some doilies down. Got my doilies. I actually did them twice. So here where you see them, you see the green and you see blue because I put them twice down. So you can use doilies. This is just a thin printer paper I'm using. And then after I printed the doilies, I put another sheet of paper on and then got this with all this cool texture in that. Then I had these papers where I had cut them with my Scan and Cut. It was so long ago. This was Diane's stamp, and so I'd stamped it and scanned it just so I could cut out the texture and have this texture. And I was going to use this as for texture in my art journal, but I thought, oh, well, I could do it on the gel press, and then now I can cut it out and add it on top rather than underneath. So that was sort of cool. I also tried some black paper. So the paint does sit on it. You want to use some probably brighter colors, but I can go back and add more to this one. I moved into some blues. And so this was that second doily print after I put the doilies down for the second time. This is just a solid, well, it's not solid, but just the flat blues and greens. So then this was still an off print from the doilies, you can see. So after I did that, I put another color on. And when I took it off, I got still that texture from those doilies on there, which is super cool. This was when I was switching over to more purplies. This was a double print. I had printed once in one color, and then I went back with some pinks. The other cool thing is you can see here is where that paint sort of dries. As you're getting more and more on your plate, you can start picking that up. And I love that, to have like those little specks of color throughout. I had done a couple tags, so I have a little tag indents there. This again was just like sort of more, I just printed it solid, but you can also still see those blues coming through here. This was a double print. It started off green, and then after I printed with the number paper, then I just put it on. I didn't put more paint down, just to pick up the little pinks in that, to get a bit of pink on there. I had moved to red. So here was from that previous one, I had printed this paper with the pinks and then did the second print over there. This was a double print. It started off with pinks, and then when I did oranges, I just put it on to pick up a bit more orange onto the sheet. This is another black one. It was with orange. It's still not my favorite, but I can still rework and add a bit more to it. This is just a basic pink one, a red and orange. And then this was after I printed those numbers. I put it back down and I still got another print out of that. Now I also use other materials. Here I just did a print on the watercolor card. Now I typically don't use watercolor paper because for this I want to use a less expensive paper and not so thick, but I just liked how the print with the numbers and that came out, that I wanted to just put it on a cardstock. As I said, I did some tags. This one is just once with green, and this one was orange and then with some reds too, and the orange tag. This was a piece of paper I had. It's like a book sheet, but it's actually a printed paper. I had showed you my doilies. And then you can do printed collage sheets. These are from Dina Wakley. And I put them on one of the presses. So even though like you're not always getting that solid, I like where the ability to get just color in certain places, because it allows that white space where you can do some other stuff or add a second color. And then I also did some, this is Tim's collage tissue, and how it picked up, it was red on top but picked up all those blues underneath. This was probably from when I printed with the blues and greens and orange. So that's what I've printed so far. I'm going to go back to some of those. I just want to show you the papers. So this was another one where I had put it through the scan and cut to get texture. So I'm going to be printing with that. This is that, it's not real book paper, but it has the book feel to it, but you can use real book paper as well. I have a piece of the watercolor stock. This is the tissue paper, plain. And I have tissue paper that's printed. I have my doilies, a bunch of tags. Then this paper here, this is just regular printer paper, really thin. And then I have an inexpensive card. It's not as thick as some cardstock, in white and black. And then this is the plate I am using. This one is, it's a gel press plate through Ranger. And I like this plate because it's just over 11 inches long and 9 inches wide. And I do a lot of 8.5 by 11 paper. So my papers fit on perfectly. They come in those circles and smaller sizes and squares, whole abundance. But I like this one because I can fit my 8.5 by 11 paper and it's not too big. And then it's also great because you can get a tin to put it in. So you can see here I've been working and I have all this texture on it. Now when you finish gel pressing, don't clean your plate. All these little bits is what will make your press interesting. So I'm going to start with an unbleached titanium from Liquitex Basics. And I put my paint right on just because I want to pick up some of that that's already there. I use a larger brayer for this. If you use a small brayer, you'll be brayering forever. Because it's one color, I'm going to go both directions. And I'm just using a copy paper for this one. So you can see my 8.5 by 11 fits on there. And some people use a brayer to go over it. I just use my fingers. If the back of the paper gets ink, doesn't really matter. And then we peel it off. So this first one, you can see it didn't pick up anything. I had too much paint. Let's do it again. And when you do this, I would get just a whole pile of papers like I showed you. Have a whole pile standing by, because you don't get out your gel press and say, I need one printed and leave. You get out your gel press and you spend a long time just making more and more papers. This one's better. So look at that. I love, even though there's a lot of white space, but it picked up all this orange, and there's no other way you can get all that texture. There's no other technique that it would work on. So I think that's super cool. Now, because I still have paint on here, I can go back over. And what I think I'm going to do is pull out one that I already had. Maybe this blue one, because it's nice with all the blues, but it's still sort of basic. So I'm going to put it on. And now it has all this cool texture to it. Okay. So I'm going to pull out a couple of those dark ones I had, like this black one. I wasn't too fond of. This one's fine, but it needs something more. Same with this one. Now with these, you can use stencils, you can use stamps. There's so much you can do. But today I'm keeping it fairly simple, even though I am going to use a stencil. I haven't used any stencils so far, and this time I'm going to put some white on because I find a couple of my prints are really dark. I'm going to go back to using Dina's paints in a moment because you can see the difference with the Liquitex, what the thick amount that comes out, whereas with Dina's you get a nice thin amount of paint. Now because I don't want this solid white onto a background, I'm going to put a stencil down. And then I have this piece here. It was on black with the blues and greens, and it was very dark. And I don't want it that dark, so I'm going to lay it over. And I'm going to burnish it with my finger because I want it to get into the holes of the stencil. Now to do this, you want a stencil that is you don't want it with really small details. You want a stencil that has some space where the paper can get in. The stencil I'm using is a Tracy Batista stencil by Stencil Girl. I'm not sure if it's still available. And so like that, now that really dark paper has a new lightness to it. And so now I can pull off my stencil. What I can do, I'm going to put this aside too, is take this blue piece. I'm going to put my stencil on it because there's the paint. And there's some of the paint has come off, and even that just adds a little more interest than what it was previously. So I'll put that aside. Okay, so back to this where we have all that design. I'm going to take this dark purpley print. And ta-da! Now how much more interesting is that? We have all the texture from the stencil, but we have some of the orange off and the purples in the background and some of the unbleached titanium. So it's now way more interesting than it started. Okay, so let's get into a little color. I'm keeping all this going on here. I'm going to put on some fuchsia. So this is Dina's paints, and you can see now the difference. It's just a little strip. It's not the big blob that the Liquitex gives you, and that's what I like about Dina's paints. This one's magenta. You can tell I like magenta, it's running out. And I will put on Carnation. Now, what I like to do when I'm doing just these simple prints is I brayer in the direction that I put the paint. Now, I did all these prints that I showed you without cleaning my brayer. What I just did was I transitioned sort of from the rainbow, where I started with greens, went to blues, went to purples, reds, pinks, oranges. So I like that. You can still see some of that white with the pink. So let's do a fresh print of this. Just put it on with my hands, make sure the edges So there, that's pretty cool because we're still getting some of the circles coming through and the different layers. Put that aside. Now though, I think this one is still sort of wet because there was so much paint on it. It's that the first titanium one we did. Let's see though if we put it on this. Typically these dry really quick. This one though, because it was so much paint, it's still a little wet. So it picked up some of it, which is starting to make it more interesting than it was being the solid color. So we'll put that aside again. We'll go for maybe a bit darker with a bit of eggplant. Fuchsia. And what's this color? Blushing. Okay. So now I'm going to go in with this sheet here that had all those dots. This again was just that basic cardstock. So there we have that print. It's sort of cool. But what's more cool is what's left behind. So I think I'll take this original sheet we did that we peeled off some of the orange, put it on. And now look at it with all those cool dots and the layers of color. Now because I still have ink on my brayer, I'm going to go back, even though it's not a lot of ink. And just try and pick some up with my tissue. And when I'm peeling it off, you want to be careful because it is thin. And I just sort of pull it back like that. And look at that, we got some really cool color on there. Okay, so I'll show you the doily. I'll use fuchsia again. I'm just staying in pinks for now. I've done a lot of the greens and blues and everything, so I'm just staying in the same color family. But even though I'm using the same colors, depending how much of the color you use and the combination, your prints will always look different. Now, what I'll do too is show you is you can then roll the other way. I've just been sort of keeping mine in sort of stripes of color. So I have my doilies. I don't have as many small ones anymore, but I sort of place it off, not quite center, because in the next one I don't want it smack dab in the center. So those are all my small ones. So I'll just take big ones and sort of fill it in. Because I can print these again later to get them covered. So make sure it is on. And then pull them off. And so I'm starting to get color on them, but I'll have to go back another time since that one doesn't have a lot. These ones, though, are more colored. That. But now I'm going to take a sheet . And you can see now I have the page with all that cool texture. I'm going to come back in again with this page I'm still trying to cover, and I'm going to put it at the edges. A little, not much more, but that cool edge we got there. Okay. So I think I've showed you most papers. The other thing I want to show you then is you can also use inks, Liquitex inks on here. Just going to put some yellow down. And because this is sheer, we'll see, because I still have pink on my brush, what happens. So I'm getting sort of orange. Just fine for now. I'm going to, let's take this blue and green sheet, see what the orange does to it. Sort of interesting. A lot of times when I use these sheets, I'm cutting them into pieces. I'm not using the sheet as a whole. So where you have, like, say, this texture down here, you could cut a shape out of it and it would be really cool. So if the whole sheet, you're like, I don't like the whole sheet, but you like pieces of it, that's fine. Then you've done good. Which I know. I have this piece here. It was black. We had green. We put the white. So I'm going to do the yellow again because I think it'll show up on that. Again, it's sort of orange because I still have orange on my brayer. But it could be interesting, so let's see. It's all about experimenting. What if? What if I do this? What if I do that? You just try it. It's only paper. So there you can see, so even that now is, it's not just the dots, it now has this color throughout the little white dots, so even that's more interesting. So you can see there is so much you can do with this. I can go back, I know what I'm going to do, the doilies. So I had the doilies that were only partially done. So what now if we put it down in there? Just picks up some color. The thing with the doilies is, again, I'm not going to probably use them as a full doily. I'm going to be cutting them up and using them on edges or under something. That one's really pretty. something. So there you have it. It gives you some idea. I highly recommend getting a gel press. As I said, it comes in numerous sizes, so if you want a smaller one to start. But I really like this one by Ranger because it's basically 9 by 11 1/4, which gives you enough space to do your big sheets. And just experiment, do the colors you like. Work with just colors that go together, like your blues and greens or reds and pinks. Try not to. You can layer the different colors once it's dry, but when you're putting it on your mat, stick with your colors in the same family so you know they'll all blend nicely together, and just have fun playing.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to give our video a thumbs up and subscribe to Scrap Time videos on YouTube. And for more Inky backgrounds, be sure to check out the Inky background playlist.